Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Fear, and welcome to Mountaineer Locker Room. Let me say at the very beginning with my buddies here, the great David Lockwood and Mickey Plumley and Mark Parsons, that we're really sorry that Greg Crist, our co-host, is in the hospital and won't be with us tonight. All the prayers and support are going out for Greg. We hope he's watching tonight, but we need Greg to be back as soon as possible. Lord knows I can't carry this show, so we need Greg. Come back fast. But hopefully he'll be with us next week. So all the prayers and support and appreciation to Greg Crist. He has a great following. We're going to have a great show tonight. I'll tell you what, David and I were talking before we started. When things happen, they happen bang, 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 bang. And we don't have a coach. We had signing day. Today was also announced that which bowl we're going to, and we're going to cover all of those tonight. And we know that you're interested in this subject matter. We all are. Mountaineer sports is alive with everything going on. And I haven't even talked about the basketball team, the men's and women's basketball team that are just going great guns. We all got really excited about those two big wins the men had in the Bahamas. Was that in Bermuda? I can't remember, Mark. Where was it? Was it in Bermuda? Bahamas. That's, yeah. Whoa, just tremendous. But the first thing we're going to do tonight is that we're going to focus in on David Lockwood. Those of you who may not know David, not only played at West Virginia, but I'll tell you the career that he has had. I'm going to throw this up here. When you think of a person who can speak to what happens within a college football program and can speak with it from a diverse perspective. I mean, you can't do any better than David Lockwood, who in the business is called Coach Lockdown. He's a defensive specialist, played defense on those great middle to end of decade teams in the 80s with God, that was a tremendous team. And look at all the places look at all the places where he's coached, twice at WVU, Nevada, Las Vegas, Arizona, Notre Dame, Appalachian State, Minnesota, Kentucky, and it goes on. And so what we want to do actually is start with David. And ordinarily, if you watch this show, we start with our guests talking about where they grew up, if they played additional sports in high school, what were those sports, what their high school football experience was, why they picked WVU, et cetera. We're going to get to that later. So let's start, though, with David. Thank you so much for being here and being here with our good friend Mark Parsons and co-host Mickey Plumley. It's just super that you're taking the time to be with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Frank. I greatly appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Great. Could you talk not a bit, but give us background on your just phenomenal. Why did you decide to go into coaching? And then give us a tour of all the experiences you've had, both at WVU and elsewhere as an assistant coach.
Well, I think I decided, Frank, to go into coaching. My dad was a basketball coach, and athletics kind of ran in our family, between some uncles and some cousins and everything. So, when I decided to, go to school, what was I going to study? I really wanted to be a teacher. And I knew it was something dealing with kids, and then obviously became student athletes and stuff. So, obviously come to, West Virginia and got done playing, worked there for a couple of ball clubs. It didn't work out. So I go into Coach Nealon and say, Coach, I'm interested in coaching. And he said, all right, David. And at the time, he wasn't big on bringing you right back after you played. Obviously, it's you're going from being in the locker room, sweating and going through all the trials and tribulations with the players, all upstairs, and now into the battle room with the coaches. So he says, why don't you go away from a year, maybe work, and then come back in a year. And I said, okay, Coach. Well, I got home and I started thinking about it. I said, I don't really want to take a year off. I want to get into coaching now. So what I did, I kind of put a little letter together, and I sent it out to just about every big school in the country. And that at that time, and you still do, when you first start the coach, you become a graduate assistant. So, I sent my letter out and got some responses and stuff. And it was funny. I'm sitting in my apartment one day, and Coach Dunlap called me. Steve Dunlap calls and says, "Hey, the boss man, wants to see you." Hey, I mean, I knew I didn't, you know, do anything to get in trouble, but still at that time, with the respect you have him coach, I'm like, "Oh man, what do you want to see me about?" So, I walk into the office, sit down, and we start talking. He says, "Dave, I was talking to our staff and this and that, and they obviously you want to get into coach, and they're like, Don, he's one of he's one of us. He knows what it takes. He's been here. He's the player. So he says, why don't you come out this spring, be a student assistant, and then if everything works out, starting the fall, you'll be a graduate assistant. Well, lo and behold, come out in the spring, and things worked out there in '89. So the fall of '89. I was a graduate assistant there, which was great. It was a great experience. Obviously you go from, you're playing, and then now you're coaching. And I never forget one of the first things Steve Dunlap said to me, who, had been my coach. He says, "Now look," he says, "you're not the player anymore. So now you're one of us. You're a coach. So it's something that you feel strongly about, or you have an idea, speak up and say it." And I kind of said, "Yeah," but still, at that point, you're still kind of like, I don't know how much I'm gonna say at this point, But obviously, it went well. That season there, we went on to play Clemson for the first time there in the Gator Bowl, and obviously we got beaten that one, and then after the season in January, I get another call from one of the assistant coaches, old Bill Collab. Obviously he was one of the ones that recruited me and my cousin Pat. But he says, "Hey," he says, get your resume sent up to." I got to give you the G version of what he actually said. If you know Bill Collab, he says, "Get your resume in the Delaware."
Oh man.
So I see, okay. So I put, get my resume together, and I shoot at the University of Delaware. And it was funny because another gentleman that was going for the job, Joker Phillips, who we ended up coaching together at a couple places. And it was funny because he ends up going back to his alma mater, which was Kentucky. So that opened the job. So here we go. I get a call from coach and says, he says, "David," he said, you're in luck. You're a blue hen." So here we are. I GA'd for 6 months that season of '89, and then that next spring, I'm at University of Delaware with coaching for my first coaching job. I get to coach for a legend, Tubby Raymond. Get to run which was like a foreign language because went from growing up playing. Football, everything was odd and even. You go to the Delaware wing T, everything was right to left, 1 to 9, so it was totally different. But yes, I spent my first coaching job was at University of Delaware, and that was 1990 to 94. And it was a great experience. Like I said, here I am, coaching a program that has won a national championship, coaching for a legend, the Delaware wing T, which was started there at Delaware, and I think with all the 4 years, 3 of the 4, we went to the playoffs, and it was crazy because the last 2, that other school down the road from us here in Morgantown, the colors are green and white. They stopped me from winning a national championship there at 1AA. There in it was 93 and 94.
Wow.
So again, 4 great years, that experience there. And then, one of the things I was told getting into coaching, that you do move some and you move around. And, if you have an opportunity to go somewhere, obviously that betters yourself, you have to take a look at it. And, I was fortunate enough to do that. So I get a call from James Madison, who it really started. They were one of the schools that I wrote to that first group when I sent those letters out, and that's what kind of the restricting earnings coach position came about. And so it was kind of it's like if you're really going to do it, you had an opportunity to be a graduate assistant at a 1A program, then you ought to take that. So I bypassed that at JMU, but then here we go, season '94. I leave Delaware and go to James Madison under Rip's here. So again, we have a heck of a year, and we get into the playoffs, and here we go, the third time in a row. We end up down there in Huntington and lose the game in double overtime. So it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. And then so then after the '94 season, the funny story I was telling whenever people ask me where you've been, it's during recruiting, contact period, and heck, it might even be around this time. And obviously we didn't have the early signing period back then. So, but I have to pick Rip up. We're going to go down to Virginia Beach and get some home visits and everything. And pick him up. We leave the house and we don't even get out, off the street. And he says, David, you might not want to hear this. He said, but I'm in on the Memphis job. I didn't say anything. I'm like, okay, well, no, I don't want to hear it if I ain't going. But he's like, oh no, you say you would go and so forth and so on. So we go down and do a couple home visits. The third we come back Friday, and he takes the position. So we have to have a team meeting, and he addresses the team, and we're out of there. So there was that year at JMU. So then I spent the next 5 years at Memphis, and Memphis was just on the verge, and it was one of those teams that you really didn't want to play back then, especially defense. They've knocked off. They beat USC. They had beaten somebody else that was one of those Power 5 conferences and stuff. So
Big
spent 5 years
Tennessee.
there. Exactly. It was the barbecue. If you like barbecue, Memphis is definitely a great place you want to be.
Yeah.
And so again, spent 5 years there. 5 good years. Like I said, it's funny. I was kind of looking at it on my 33 years. I think I've only had 6 below 500 seasons, and unfortunately 5 of them there with Memphis. And the last year, the '99 year, we were that close. We lost to 3 SEC. We lost to Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Tennessee, all by a touchdown combined. So again, it was was right there. Yes, and when we first got there, there was a gentleman by the name of Vic Koenig that Rip kept on the staff. And he had left and went out to Wyoming, and he kidded around. He said, if I ever get an opportunity, he said, I'm going to call you. Well, lo and behold, Dana Dimmel gets let go, and I get this phone call, and it's Vic. He's like, Dave, you want to come to Laramie, Wyoming? I said, yeah, and I take it sight unseen. So I get off the plane there in Laramie, and you had to go into Denver first, and it's kind of like flying into Pittsburgh and flying from Pittsburgh into Morgantown.
That's right.
I used to be on a little plane. Well, it was the same way in Laramie. Flying to Denver, take one of the commuters into Laramie, and I'm coming in there like this, and I get off that plane and I look around and I just said, what the blop bleep bleep did I just do? So there it went. I'm there, and I'm there only for 3 months. I think it's about the beginning of December, and then right there. Signing date, right before signing date, there's a position, which is funny because Bill Legg, who was on staff here in Morgantown, and there was a wide receiver position open at Maryland, and I was trying to get closer to back home, and so I called Bill and said, hey, do you know anybody at Maryland, blah blah blah, and he says, our position's open here. Tony Pierce left. I was like, no. And I'm still back. So, Don's, to my side, Don's not going to bring me back just yet. And sure enough, Vic Koenig walked to my office. He says, hey, he said, Don Nealon's on the phone. Is this something I should know about? I said, well, I guess so. And then he comes back and he says, Vic says to me, he says, hey, just take your butt back home. So there it was that spring there of 2000. I land. I walk in the building. It was the first day of spring ball. So again, when I first got into coaching, that was always one of my goals. I've always wanted coach at the place I play at, and it actually takes place. I'm back in Morgantown. I'm coaching with Coach Nealon. Playing for play for Steve, and Kyrie recruited me, and here I am now working with those guys. So it was obviously that was a great experience, and so we go through that season, which was a crazy one. It was. I think we have 4 games to go, and I'll never forget it. And kind of, we're sitting there, and I get a call from Tony Caridi, and he's kind of asking me about this and that, and name comes up, and what you talking about? And I'm like, okay, well, we have the staff meeting, and that's where Coach Nealon, says that, hey, after the game tomorrow, the Syracuse game, I'm going to retire, and that's my retirement. We're like, whoa, and. So there that went, and then obviously, then Rich gets the job. I was fortunate enough to stay on there at Morgantown, and but had the opportunity to Desmond Robinson. I don't know if you guys remember that name, but he was coaching there when I was playing right there in that '88 season.
Mm-hmm.
He was coach. Well, he was at Notre Dame, and so got a call, and so here we go. I go. Interview at Notre Dame, and of course you walk on campus. I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm in awe. When I leave there, I said, I called my wife. I said, whoa! I said, we got to get this job. I said, this place is unbelievable, and I leave there, and Bob Davie, who was the head guy, he says, I'll let you know. I interviewed on Friday, I think it was. Let you know by Tuesday. So here it goes. Tuesday came and went. It was a couple of weeks past Tuesday. I said, well, okay, well, obviously I didn't get the job. So I'm staying in Morgantown, and here we go. And I get a call from Desmond and Robinson. He says, I'm glad I had interviewed also up at Syracuse when Pasqualoni was there. He's like, I'm glad you didn't do anything with that job. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we ain't do nothing yet. He said, Bob's going to call you in here about a half hour. Sure enough, I hang up the phone, and a little bit after that, it's Bob Davie. He says, David, I want to offer you the job, and
Wow,
that's coach. I'm coming. So there we, so I'm 2001 there at Notre Dame, and of course, I don't know, a year before I get there, and Coach Neal retires. I get to Notre Dame, and they, that next year they decide to fire Bob. So I don't know if it was me or not being a bad luck. So, but again, it was a great. That was a great experience. There's no place, outside of obviously than the old Gold and Blue, but you step on that campus, and game day in South Bend is unbelievable. That was a great experience, and it was the first time being involved in a game day when we played SC. But the rivalry, to be in that SC Notre Dame rivalry game is something special. It really is, and. So again, was a part of that, and then left Notre Dame and went up to Minnesota.
mm-hmm.
So again, here we go. Now we're in the Big Ten. Worked for Glenn Mason, who was a great guy to work for. Minnesota Big Ten was a fun conference, man. It really was, and had the opportunity. We beaten everybody but Ohio State. So it was a great experience. Went to 5 bowl games in the 5 years I was there, and. So again, that was another great experience. Left Minnesota and went to Kentucky, and that was the 07 year. So that was we had a pretty good team, and that was the year that we beat LSU. LSU was ranked number 1. Beat them in triple overtime, which was a heck of a game. So obviously that was a great experience. And then that's when Rich leaves there at Morgantown, goes to Michigan, and Coach Stu gets the job, and Coach Stu calls and says, "Hey, David, you want to come back home?" And I said, "Well, by God," I said, "Yes, I do, Coach." And bingo, so I left Kentucky and went come back to Morgantown, which was 08 to 11, and again, it's another opportunity to be back at your alma mater. It was a great run, and when you obviously hated how that whole thing ended up. But obviously the great memory, that those years was the Orange Bowl year, the
Mm-hmm.
Orange Bowl game, and so we play that game, and here we are, and myself, Jeff Castilberg Calavish, a week later from the Orange Bowl, we're out there in the desert. Here we are. We're landing in Tucson, Arizona. With the palm trees, sunny weather. I tell you what, that weather is unbelievable. So I went from Minneapolis, where it's just the opposite, to Tucson, and had four good years there at Arizona.
And that was on the Rich Rod staff.
That was on Rich's staff. Yes, it was. You know, and that 14 year, we won the Pac-12 South, and the crazy when you sit back and look at it, because that was the first year of the Power Six, when they started the bowl game, the whole mini playoff series, and we were fortunate enough to be a part of that. And the only thing that really sucked about it is Arizona had never played in the Rose Bowl. Well, here we go. We were in the Pac-12, deal, and that was the year that we ended up playing Oregon twice that year. We beat them the first time and lost to them in the championship game. So they go on and play in the championship game. Well, the Rose Bowl is the national championship game, so we don't get to go to the Rose Bowl. We end up playing in the Fiesta Bowl. So that was the only negative thing about that. So then left Tucson, come back, ended up back east. Ended up at down in Delaware, and actually sat out that season. And I ended up coaching the DBs for my youngest son Jeff, who was a junior that year, and so I ended up coaching the DBs with him, and it was a great experience, because I went from seeing some of the games to every one of his games his junior year, which was great. And then the season of 17 is I journeyed back out west and was at UNLV for a year, and then Coach Castile, who ended up at Nevada Reno. So that was 18 and 19. I think we reunited up there in Nevada Reno, and then 20. That was through all the COVID. I went to Kentucky State for a little bit. It was kind of the off season, the spring. It didn't work out at that time, and come back, and then here we go. The 21-22 season, I end up at App State. So as they say, once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer, and and stuff. So so I had two great, two good seasons there. We went in 22. We go down to College Station and beat, they're ranked 6th in the country, and then have an opportunity to beat those guys. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow.
Well, isn't it incredible, Mickey and Mark? And I was mentioning to David, we were getting ready for today. Given the fact that we've got the coaching vacancy that was announced just a few days ago, what a perfect person, because he's coached on so many different teams with great coaches, but also through transition. So why don't we move right into that now? Mark is incredibly networked and has been hearing a number of things. He's going to share what he knows. Mickey's going to do the same thing down in Atlanta, because one of the rising stars is on the staff at UGA. And what I've done is, all I've done here is just taken a list from Mike Kazaza at 247sports.com. A lot of lists are out there. We don't have to be wedded to this list at all, but this is Mike's list that he shared. He does a great job of describing why each person is on the list, what they bring, et cetera, et cetera. And Mickey, why don't we start with you? The name that's not on this list is the defensive coordinator at Georgia.
Yeah.
Do you want to say a few words about him?
Sure. Glenn Schumann. He's very well thought of down here in the SEC. Interesting guy. He never played college football personally. He graduated from Alabama, which was his dad's alma mater. And I imagine through his dad's connections, once he got his postgraduate degree at Alabama. And Nick Saban hired him as a graduate assistant in the program. So he was trained, under the master, if you will, in my estimation, probably the greatest college football coach that we've ever seen, except maybe for Bobby Bowden. But anyway, very well thought of. Of course, when Kirby Smart left Alabama and came to Georgia, he brought Schumann with him. He's intensive linebacker coach, both outside and inside. He's been the defensive coordinator here since 2022 for Kirby. Done one heck of a job, as you can see. You know, those guys went 8 overtimes. I'm sure everybody watched that game. The what they call good old-fashioned hate between Georgia and Georgia Tech last Friday night went 8 overtimes. And let me tell you, if you're the defensive coordinator, David, I'm sure you can speak to this, you know, how in the world do you defend 2-point conversions, 8 successive plays, and come out with a winner, which Schumann did? I mean, he was responsible for calling the signals on all those attempts, and in the final analysis, the Dogs prevailed. But very well thought of. The other good thing about him is he's got a great recruiting connection network here in the South. And as we've discussed before on the show, Frank, you know, we need to get more athletes out of Georgia and Florida, because that's where Georgia, Florida, Texas, in my estimation, is where the great preponderance of really 4- and 5-star athletes come from. Tough for us to recruit and get 4- and 5-stars at West Virginia. So, you know, I'm of the opinion we need to concentrate on getting really good 3-star athletes that we can keep. And then we need a very, very good coaching staff to develop those guys into 4 or 5 stars, and hope nobody buys them off with NIL money. But very well thought of. Getting a lot of press down here, and we'll see. I don't know if they've talked to him yet or not, but I'm sure he's in the mix.
Great. For those of you who don't know, Mick is located in Atlanta. Mark is in Tennessee, near Nashville. Mark, what are you hearing?
Well, you know, I hear a lot of people say, you know, well, if we get rid of Coach Brown, who are we going to get? Like, you know, WVU is just chump change. But I think it's a very good job. It's an attractive job. There's a lot of people looking to improve their situation and to get a job like this. And I think West Virginia offers a lot as far as becoming a head coach. You know, I hear a lot of things. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about, you know, a lot of donors like Jimbo Fisher, a lot of donors like Rich Rodriguez. Ren Baker has his network of people, you know, Barry Odom at UNLV and some of the others. You know, right now, I think it's kind of a wait and see kind of thing. I think they're actually going to go through with an interview process, and I think we'll have somebody in place before the bowl game. I think sometime next week, hopefully, they'll have a decision made. But as far as who's the outright leader of this, it's hard to say. I think there's tugging and pulling from all directions, and I think just going to have to see how the interviews go. But I do hear a lot of people pushing Jimbo and Rich Rodriguez. I also hear Barry Odom's name mentioned. I heard the defensive coordinator from Georgia was brought in here a couple of days ago. I heard his name mentioned. You know, there's several good names on that list. I have heard Jamie Chadwell is a front runner at North Carolina. He's at Liberty right now. Somebody else I think that's intriguing is Ty Helton at Western Kentucky. He was a offensive coordinator at Tennessee. I think he's a good candidate, as well as the offensive coordinator at Kotelnicki at Penn State is also well thought of. You know, if he was brought in, he could possibly bring Jawan Sider back to West Virginia. You know, there's a lot of ups to a lot of the different prospects. You know, I think they're probably going to go with somebody who can assemble. As Frank mentioned, you want to get a good staff. I think they're going to probably bring in somebody that's going to be able to to get a staff together quickly, but also a staff that's going to be able to recruit well. And as Mickey said, coach those guys up, those 3-star athletes. To that's what West Virginia has been successful with all over, the history. And David can attest to that. With Coach Nealon, they did a great job of that. Mm-hmm. And I think, as far as a favorite, I just don't have one right now. I'm just kind of a cross section. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And a number of people, you've read this on Facebook. It's been written. They're a little bit surprised that there is a search going on. Sometimes in these circumstances, a lot of times, someone is let go, and then within a matter of day or two, there's a name. The politics always play into this kind of thing, and as you and I have talked many times, that the politics on this one is fierce because you have, I don't want to say different camps, but and let's also, we've talked about this, is the donors have a big say in this because their money is not only needed to help pay the bills, but as you talked about earlier, with the NIL, Mickey, we've got to have money continuing to come into Country Roads Trust or whatever it might be called in the future. And so now the flip side of this coin, which surprised some people, and David and I were talking about this, is Coach Brown. As soon as the word got out that he would not be remaining at West Virginia, schools started to contact him, and people started talking early on that, well, he's going to go back to his alma mater at University of Massachusetts. He started his career at Kentucky down in Lexington, but finished it at UMass. But it was announced, really a really good source, Pete Thamel, basically said that job's going to go to the Rutgers defensive coordinator, former coach at Maine. He knows the East, the Middle Atlantic, has had experience as a head coach at an equivalent type of school at Maine. And so basically, Pete said that's a done deal. But Mark, you mentioned to me that Coach Brown was considered at Charlotte, but evidently
he's withdrawn his name on that. Apparently, App State is interested in him. Appalachian State, Central Florida, and I've heard his name mentioned at Southern Miss as well. So I've also heard Marshall's coach is hot for the Southern Miss job as well. So
yeah. David, there are a couple of people, at least one, on this list that you've coached for with Rich at two places, West Virginia and then at Arizona. Did you coach? You didn't coach under any of these other guys, did you?
No, I did not. Did not.
Yeah. What's interesting about this? Let me ask this question for those of you who saw. Had a chance to watch Ren Baker's press conference. This is a mixed group, and by the way, they're not actually in order. Although what Mike did with his list, those at the bottom are not as what I would say hot on the trail as the ones that are toward the top. I would say once you get Summerall at Tulane and below. Those top few, and again, that's just one person's perspective. Mickey, what was your take? You had a chance to watch Ren Baker's press conference. What were your thoughts about the approach he took and what he said?
Just very impressed with the method that he's using to make this selection. He's leaving no stone unturned. As he described it, he's casting the nets far and wide. He said he did not want to be second-guessed by anyone. So there are a bunch of candidates in the hopper. And as you mentioned, Frank, typically, the two or three top candidates, and you make a quick decision and get on with things. You got the National Letter signing day coming up. You got always a concern kids might leave if you don't get a replacement name pretty soon. But I think Ren is doing a great job of balancing the aspirations of the public and their desire to get somebody in there quickly.
Yeah.
along with the political considerations of the donors. And the third leg of that stool, which I really commend him for, is what he personally thinks is best for West Virginia University. And look at the decisions he's made with the basketball program, with the girls' basketball program, with the baseball program. No doubt in my mind, he's the right guy to make this call. And I think he'll take his time. He'll do everything that's required. He'll do all his due diligence. They asked him in the press conference how many telephone calls he was taking. He said it's averaging about 100 a day right now. So I just can't imagine what an AD goes through. What an AD goes through in a situation like this in terms, he must only be sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night.
Yeah.
I know he's working his tail off.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Ren. I think he's made some really great decisions since he came to WVU.
Yeah, a great summary. And as you said, Mark, this is his legacy appointment. Those other appointments are important. This is it. Yeah. Did you have a chance to watch? I was just going to ask Mark.
I wanted to go back. Sorry.
That's all right. I was just going to ask Mark if you had a chance to watch the press conference. Mark.
Yeah, I saw it. I think he's going to do his due diligence to make sure he makes the right hire. Like you said, his legacy depends on this. He's got to make the right hire, but he's also got to please the donors. If I put the bulk of that money up for that buyout, I would want to have some influence on who was chosen. So, we'll see how it goes. I do think there's some advantages to Jimbo and Rodriguez with the fact I think they can get a staff together, a quality staff quickly. An advantage Rich Rodriguez brings too is he can possibly bring some players with him, especially some skill guys, just similar to what Cignetti's done at Indiana, to fill some of the roster spots that he's going to have open here. We're going to lose some guys to the portal, and I think the new coach that's coming in is going to live and die through the portal that first year. And I feel like that he could possibly bring some people with him. Plus, I think he could also bring, and Jimbo too. I think they both bring in quality coaches on their staffs, and I think that's the plus for both those guys.
Yeah, I think I'm going to turn to
might bring David
here.
with him. You never know.
Boy, I tell you what, great minds think alike. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is bring Rich Rod and Rich Rod. Hey, the way I would put it, tell Rand Baker this, Mickey. If Rich Rod gets a job, and if he doesn't bring David, it's a no deal. There's no deal.
Yeah.
And then you got to bring.
I like your thinking, Frank. I like your thinking right there.
And you know what I told you? He's got to bring Pat Randolph in as running backs coach. So it's a twofer. But what's amazing to me, because today was, and we were talking about this earlier before we went on air. This graph right here. This is amazing to me, David. I don't know. Is this, to me, this can't be normal. That maybe, and it's just me, you have the experience. Here we are, we lost a coach within days of the national, the early signing. And the sort of the conventional wisdom was, there's just going to be Katie bar the door. These guys are going to run away. They have to for their own self-interest. And then when you look at this, and let me describe this chart, what I want to start with is that comments column. The first row there says, as of 4:30 today on Rivals, which is the source I always look at, 21 players signed, 1 4-star, 17 3-stars, 3 2-stars. And then if you go down a bit on that column, yes, we had some decommits. We lost a 4-star in the 26 class, McWhorter, who's highly thought of. We lost a defensive lineman from Maryland, a DB from Florida, an athlete, Mallory from Connecticut, who signed with Florida State. But if you look at what West Virginia did this time, no question, that same column, before Coach Brown was let go, we were ranked by Rivals 31st in the country, 2nd in the Big 12. Okay? in a matter of a couple days, we moved from 31st to 43rd and down to 7th in the conference. But if you look at that bottom cell in that comments column, then you look at the performance to date, and these guys are all signed. There are no verbals that I could see. They're all signed now. And you look at what happened last year, because this is 25. The class of 24, we were ranked 42nd in the country and 6th in the Big 12. That compares to 43rd in the country this year, 7th in the Big 12, with one 4-star recruit, Farmer, who didn't play much this year, but he certainly will next year if he stays. He's a great wideout. And so those numbers are almost the same. Now, that's a lot of talking on my behalf, but I wanted to frame it. This does not seem usual to me, David. Would you have expected this in a transition like this with a bang, bang, a firing, and then the signing date? I know this didn't happen when D'Antonio left Michigan State because I was there, but is this typical, or is this what you it's just my ignorance or naivete?
Frank, I don't know if it's typical. I think it's becoming more and more common. I think kids are, I know I recruit some kids. You would tell them, when you look at this, situation where you want to go, obviously the coach means a lot. You go to a lot of places because of the coach, but at the same time, you kind of come in and, we kind of use the analogy as, hey, if, they come in and said, such and such school was no longer going to play football, would you still come here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one avenue. And then again, as we all know, Morgantown, on a game day is a pretty happening place. Now it's a pretty good place. So again, you got to, go to a place now. I think kids are starting to see they got to go places where they can play.
That's right.
So obviously most of them want to play right away and what type of impact they can have on a certain program. Not that they can't, won't have it on any other program, but they might have it more. These kids might have it more here, there in Morgantown than some of the other places they recruited. Right. So it's kind of a, combination of a bunch of things. And again, at the same time, you can play at one place. I don't care how many offers you have, you only can play at one of them. So again, I think that plays a little bit into it as well.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is that the conventional wisdom is you play for head coach and your position coach. But, David, we were talking the other day about this, and we've talked about it with a lot of people. There's something about Morgantown. It's not for everyone, but I've heard this, if I've heard this 50 times, probably more like 100, is that for some people, once they go there, they know that's the place they need to be. That certainly applied to me many years ago because I came from out of state. Once I got there, I knew that's where I needed to be at that time. And so, and also let's give credit to the coaches who are currently on staff. They must have doubled down to keep these kids because, again, there are no verbals. Now here, Evan, the reporter, is saying that it's being reported out of Alabama that Rich Rod is in talks with WVU. Again, you hear a lot of things. We'll just see whether that happens. But the other thing, Mickey and Mark, I'll ask you this. The point I was making earlier can be critiqued. When I said, boy, the 25 class looks just a lot like the 24 class. The problem with saying that is that this is a loaded 3-star class, just like other classes have been. And actually with 3 2-stars, you would expect those players to possibly go to a group of 5 school or a football championship school. And so if you look in the far left column, which is the offense, and the middle column, that's a defense, clearly they recruited to need a lot of offensive linemen, all 3 stars. I think the gem on the offensive side is Desenor, highly thought of running back out of Florida. And then on the defensive side, you can see that you got the D-line, 5 players there, 2 linebackers, and we know we need defensive backs. But what Rivals is saying this year is that our recruiting is about in the same of the same caliber as Pitt, Indiana, Arizona, and North Carolina State. And I think a lot of fans would say we need to do better than that, and we need to increase the number of 4-stars that we have. But your thoughts on that? Let me start with Mark this time, and then Mickey. Is that profile good enough, or do we have to do better? Which is what a leading question, I guess. Mick, do you want to start?
Sure.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, but then you, Mark, after.
Yeah, a couple
Okay.
comments on that. I just don't think, well, let me make a positive statement instead of a negative one. I think we need to realize that, West Virginia is not as attractive for a student athlete who has professional NFL potential as a school like Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, schools that have a higher percentage than average of college athletes that go on to the pros. And I think the 4 and 5-star kids are probably more concerned about that than the 2 and 3-star kids. The 2 and 3-star kids, they want to look for a place where they can play, because I think they realize that their college career is probably going to be it. They're probably not going to go on to the pros. So I think, for that reason, I think that's one of the reasons why West Virginia attracts a lot of 3-star athletes. And again, the coaching philosophy has been, as we talked before, bring those kids in, coach them up, get them to the 4 or 5-star level. I did want to go back just for one moment here, Frank, and comment on something that David had to say from a player's perspective, as far as not switching schools when the head coach you signed with leaves. From my personal perspective, back in 1966, in a galaxy far, far away, I was signed by Gene Corum. But by the time I got to campus, it was Jim Carlin and Bobby Bowden. As a matter of fact, I told the story before. A lot of people say Corum, he was fired the week that I signed my letter of intent. A lot of people say that's the reason why he was fired. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway. When I got there, I didn't make the decision on Morgantown based on the head coach. I made it based on Morgantown. I made it based on, basically the game I went up for was when West Virginia beat Pitt 63-48 and just an all-out Clemson WVU type scoring fiasco. But long story short, I think most college kids choose a school not based on the head coach as much as their recruiter. Now, David, you can speak to this. I know that recruiting is a big part of the coach's jobs, but would you agree that your recruiter and the atmosphere and your campus visit has as much to do with where you decide to go as who the head coach is, unless you just want to play for Nick Saban or you want to play for a Bobby Bowden? Would you agree with that?
Yes, Mickey, I agree with that. That's definitely part of it. Like I said, it goes into, like I said, if you pick that school, and we all know that the coaching carousel at this time of the year, coaches up and leave, and there's a chance that could happen to you. And like I said, I've always tried to point that out. And it's you feel good when a kid says that, but says that, but at the same time, you're trying to, I wanted to make sure that it was the best interest for the kid and his family. And
Right.
Not just because of me, but again, if it was the best, situation for the kid and for the kid's family, both obviously academically and athletically, then, you obviously need to take a good hard look of, we'll talk about West Virginia. So, you got to take a good hard look at West Virginia. So,
Yeah.
I think the tough thing in this, the game has changed so much. I think, none of us had this when we were at West Virginia, is the social media thing. Social media plays a big part in this thing, and these kids are, so they're playing against guys. They might have had a better a game against a certain individual, excuse me, and this kid's got these many offers. I only got, that many offers. So I think a lot of that plays into it as well. So it makes it really tough, And now that the kids are getting paid, and again, I know I can't. If one of my kids were to come in and say, "Hey, coach, I'm leaving, I'm going to such and such," they're going to give me blah 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 blah, and we can't offer. I mean, I'd be great to sit there and say that he should not look into it. If that was a better situation for him and his family, obviously, I mean, a lot of these kids that are playing, have families of their own. They have kids, and some of them have multiple kids. So at the end of the day, you have to do stuff that's the best for you and your particular situation. So that's the main. That's also plays a part into it. So it makes it even tougher. Again, these guys are talking to each other, and like I said, hey, such and such over here is getting this, I'm not getting that, and so forth and so on. So it makes it really tough, man, in this day and age.
It does. One of the things I want to think before I get to Mark here is you'll see that in the far left column, the bottom line there is bold WV-based, West Virginia-based recruits. And you'll see the wide receiver from Hurricane is one of the 21 signed players, Tashawn Dews. And then if you look under the defense, under defensive back, Zay Jackson from Huntington. So 2 West Virginia boys players on that list. Mark, your thoughts about this recruiting class? 21 seem to be stable now. This after we lost a few over the last few days.
Yeah, I think I was shocked. I didn't think we would sign as many as we did. We flipped the guy from Carolina, which is a big plus as well. And I think we should be happy with what we have there. In regards to the recruiting and bringing in 4 stars, I think, David talked about, it's a lot about relationships. But now it's changed. There's a lot, it's how much can you pay me? And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way that's where we're at now. You have to play the game. And as far as West Virginia getting, multiple 4 stars, I think we can get more than 1 4-star. Yes. Are we going to get all 4 stars or the majority 4 stars? I don't think so. I think we're going to, if we can get 4 or 5, that would be a fantastic year, but I just don't think we can do that consistently. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Take the steps to get more. One of the points that was brought up, I really would want to reinforce, and that is that, and again, I want to take a page out of Mickey's chapter about being positive, and not say this in a negative way at all. One of the things, and I'll put it this way, one of the things that struck me, Mickey, when I was writing the book about your group back in the 60s, early 70s, and then when I think, David, taking it through the years when particularly when Don came from Michigan, Rich Rod, when you look and you go through with Stu, when you look at the list of those assistant coaches, to me, it's almost a Hall of Fame. You go down the list of guys who, we've talked with player after player that almost to a person said, I came here and I was an all-stater. I was a nationally known player. I didn't know if I could make it because of the drills, the routine, what was expected of me at West Virginia. It was the coaches that took these players wherever they were and made them better. You go through the Steve Dunlap. You talked about Bill Kurlavich. You talk about Denny Brown. You go down that list, and when I think about Bobby Bowden's first year at West Virginia, 3 coaches on that staff ended up in the College Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame. 3 coaches on what probably was a 7 or 8 coaching staff is in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's just amazing. And that's a long-winded way of saying we've got to do that again. That has to happen again for West Virginia to take the next step. So did I overstate that, David? You're one of the guys. So I'm talking about you too. But those assistant coaches are so critical. It's obvious.
They're critical.
Yeah.
They're critical.
Yeah.
I mean,
Big difference in the
without guys
staff
like David, we
with
need more
Carlin's
guys like
staff
David.
and Bowden's staff.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that you like to
Than
see
what we
out
have
is
now.
whoever gets it, just that has some West Virginia ties, and
Yeah.
is able, as we're talking about, coaches and assistant coaches that that have some ties to West Virginia. You said it earlier, Frank, that Morgantown is not for everybody. So you got to know something of what it takes or what it took to to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And that fit is so critical. That is, I don't know. You guys know we're all of the same cloth. And you said it, Mark. And I was talking with Daryl Prue the other day about it. And I asked him, Daryl, what's the biggest difference between playing back in the 80s and what you see going on now? And his response was, it was highly relational back then. Now it's highly transactional. It's that this movement from relational to transactional. And I told him, I said, you know what? Many of you know I spent over 3 decades at Michigan State. And one of the things that's interesting is that Tom Izzo the other day was faded by Northern Michigan, where he played. And he gave a speech. And he basically said, my task when I got the job 25 years ago, I wanted to build Michigan State into a national basketball power, but it had to be relational. It had to be a family. It had to be connected. We had to be connected to each other. And what's interesting about Izzo is he rarely uses the portal. This year, I think he has 2 players on the portal. He does it the old-fashioned way by recruiting high school, tries to keep the kids for 3 years, 4 years if possible. Yeah, there's no money, but Michigan State isn't going to rival an Ohio State or a Michigan or a Texas with respect to the NIL. They come there because they want to play for them. And, that relational piece is really critical, really, really critical. So your thoughts, David?
Well, I mean, I think we've all said it, and again, I think another, one of the things that makes it tough, anytime you have a coach that's fired, and all situations are different, but the next guy coming in has got to win now, and that's again, people don't want to, the time to develop a guy. Those days are, they're tough to come by now, and I think it hurts the high school recruiting, again, so here you are, you take a great high school player, okay, that he might be a great high school player, but as we all know, you get to the next level, it's a totally different ballgame. He just might not be ready to play right now. That doesn't mean he's not a great player. Everybody develops and matures differently, so you sit there and you take that on top of, and then I can go in the portal and get a kid that's just as good, or he might be a tad, just under that kid, but he's played some college football. He's had a bunch of snaps. The kid who's got experience. That's one thing, I think on the outside, a lot of people you lose sight of. Kid might be, experience means a lot. Experience means a lot. So it's tough. You're getting it, as a coach coming in, you're getting it from all facets of it, and the bottom line is win. And a lot of times when when you don't win, the fans get unhappy, everybody, administration gets unhappy, and again, I might have a great player, couple, 3, 4 players here that, hey, and next year, or maybe a year after that, they'll be great players. Sometimes you don't have the time, the luxury to do that.
You may not be there.
Right. So again, I think that's, one of the things, why the portal is appealing, because I can, again, I can go out there and get the guy that I'm looking for that's played some football already.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you say on the portal is that when Prime went to Colorado, he knew he had to win quickly, and he couldn't do it through the high school route. heavily, always at the top of the list on the portal with nil, always at the bottom of the list with respect to high school. That's flipped this year. In fact, let me put it up here that you can actually see it. You can actually see it over here in this comments column. Right now, according to Rivals, the top 3 schools in recruiting high school players are TCU, Baylor, and Colorado. That just wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. They just weren't recruiting, but now they're doing it. The bottom 3 are Texas Tech, KU, and UCF. But the other thing I would say, David, about what you said is that the old bromide used to be, oh, football takes time. You give a coach 3 to 5 years. Look, what happened at Indiana this year says forget that. Indiana was a bottom feeder, and they almost made the college playoff. And also, and Mickey knows this, I sent this to our text group, a group that was on a text stream. If you look at the Power 4 and the conference championships this year, every single conference championship game has a first-year team. SMU in the ACC, Oregon in the Big Ten, Arizona State in the Big 12, and who made it? Oh, Texas in the SEC.
Texas in the SEC, all first-year teams.
Yeah. So Mark,
all first-year teams. So
Mark,
the 3 to 5 year, the 3 to 5 year window is definitely gone. There's no question about that. Now, back in the day, a coach was given 3 years, most on the average, to develop. I mean, Carlin even, our first year we were 3-5-2. Second year we were 7-3. Third year we went 10-1.
That's right.
Yeah. But that was then, and this is now. I want to get back to this relational aspect, Frank, that you brought up. And here's what I think is really key for West Virginia and West Virginia fans and West Virginia football. Let's set up a comparison here. Given that there's no professional athletic teams in the state of West Virginia, you've got 800,000 to 1 million people every Saturday glued to that TV or ESPN or some social media watching the Mountaineers. Given that sort of, and it's a non-transient state. I mean, people who are born in West Virginia typically stay in West Virginia. It's not like Georgia, where half the residents are from somewhere else, or Florida, where 3/4 are from somewhere else. West Virginians are West Virginians. Now, here's your choice. You can have Hudson Clement as a walk-on.
Yeah.
And let that kid prove his worth and earn a scholarship, or you can get a 4-star player from the portal. Which one are you taking?
Well, you know what I would say, so I'm not fair. I'd go with the Hudson Clements every single time.
And so would I dare say 90% of West Virginians would as well.
Yeah, when you think about that. Yeah. Mark, I want to bring this, I want to put what Timothy brought up, and I want to have you follow up. And what Timothy's saying, I think, has a lot of value. If a 3-star player goes to a team, goes to West Virginia, and then if it goes to a Big Ten SEC, automatically get bumped up to a 4-star, 5-star. Okay, here's the deal. Yeah. West Virginia went to a basketball tournament, and they beat the number 3 team in the country. Then they beat the number 24 team in the country, and they almost beat the team in between, almost cleaned it up. Okay, so I figured, being the naive Frank Fear that I am, Timothy isn't naive. What I thought was, hey, I can't wait for the rankings to come out, because West Virginia is going to be in the top 25. The AP ratings, the rankings came out on Monday. West Virginia's 36th.
Yeah.
I said, oh, wait until the coaches poll comes out. Oh, the coaches know. The coaches poll came out, and West Virginia's like 47th.
Yeah.
And so now here's the end of this. Michigan State gets beaten by Kansas, but they bounce back and beat North Carolina. they weren't ranked. They're 24th.
Yeah.
So, and I said to myself, those of us who are WVU fans have to understand the politics of the system.
Yeah.
And so I think Timothy has a lot there's a lot to be said, Timothy, as always. There's another question. Mark, do you have thoughts about the UNLV coach? I know.
I like him.
Odom.
I
Yeah.
like him. I know Baker likes him too. Whether, at one time I'd heard he wasn't interested. And then I've also heard that he's right here in the running. So I don't know. I do like him. I think would be a good coach. I think the guy at Penn State would be a good coach too. But I think there's a big push for Jimbo and Rich Rod. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. And of course, Rich Rod has done wonders. He lost the first 3 games of the year, and he's won 8 in a row, and he's now playing Western Kentucky for the conference championship. But boy, I'll tell you, it's just, really, really appreciate all the good comments tonight, all the good conversations. But I want to loop back, if we could, back to you, David, because, again, we flipped the script tonight in terms of how we ordinarily do things. But I think it also will shed light on the thinking that recruits go through. How did a player like you from Eastern Pennsylvania end up at West Virginia, and what were the other what schools were you looking at the time other than West Virginia, and what sealed the deal? Who sealed the deal for you to be a Mountaineer?
Well, again, Frank, it was, unlike, my cousin Pat, who was highly recruited, had, your Syracuse, your Marylands, and Central Florida was one, because Bill Cupid, who was a guy that coached up in our county, he left and went down to coach at Central Florida, So again, it comes down to relationships. And then going down, because Pat was a year ahead of me, and I went down there in the spring and fell in love with it, and there you go, So again, in Collab, he's one of a kind, Bill Collavage, and I just think it's great for me to, I've known that man since 1983, as a player, as a graduate, and as a coach, and more so as a person. So again, as we said in the beginning, you go down there and you fall in love with the place, and it's a place where it's a blue collar. We talk about tough kids, and to be a part of something like that is, it's a great honor. It's special, and as I forget who made the comment, but somebody, they go to a certain school, they get a certain school. I mean, who's to say what star, what ranking a kid is on all the football players in the country? I mean, I don't know how sometimes we can sit there and really say that. Hey, it might be in that area or that, but to say in the country, I always thought that was pretty, that was pretty tough, and again, it's a team. All teams are different. The circumstances are different. So I think as West Virginia, we've always had that success of that blue collar, hard, tough nose kid that so, and a lot of kids weren't highly recruited by national schools and had wanted to prove something, and when we got there, it fit in with the staff that we had, and I think another name that obviously sticks out is he had a great eye for talent, Donnie Young.
Donnie Young.
Donnie Young.
I was going to ask you, was Donnie involved in recruiting?
Yes, he was. Donnie Young had a great eye for talent, and you look at the guys that have, have come through there. That there's been some great players, and we see it. You get, not every great college player, unfortunately, goes on and has a luxurious pro career. It just doesn't happen. It's all, excuse me, it's all about the fit, the right situation, the right organization. I mean, just like some of the coaches that have come in, assistants and head coaches that come in Morgantown. I don't think they can't coach. It just the fit maybe wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a a part as a player, as a coach. It plays a part in it. So again, it's, you say, once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer, but it is a special place. Game day on Saturday. I remember leaving Lakeview and crossing Cheat Lake and coming to Mountain Man, and we had to go down the middle lane because the traffic was all the way out there to 68, and it was just a great. It was a great feeling. You get off the bus and you got fans. You got let off there and walked down beside the building. It was unbelievable. And
Yeah.
obviously made the right choice because heck, the last year we go 11-0 and play for it all.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that's the one thing that
Yeah.
you can say. Obviously, we'd like to have that one back, and
Yeah.
heck, wish if Old Maids doesn't get hurt there in that early first quarter, I think we walk away with that one.
Yeah, I think you do. It's interesting you brought that up, David, about the sort of the West Virginia brand, the brand, so to speak. I don't know how many people had a chance to read when Coach Brown was fired. There was an article in the New York Times, and one of the things early in that article it said is that maybe if there's something that needs to be in place that hasn't been for a while, is to have a head coach whose persona fits the brand. And when you think about those coaches over the years, not all of them, but a number of them, when you think of grit, determination, we're not going to lose. When I think of Denny Brown, for example, as defensive coordinator, and that steel-eyed look of Don Nealon, and Rich Rod, obviously, spitting fire, et cetera, et cetera. But what I love, you sent a bunch of pictures. I love this picture. That's you. Who is number 6? This is against Penn State.
That was Roundtree. I think that's who that was for Penn State. Yeah, and it was funny because that ended up being on the front page of our sports section, and then where I went to high school was Pencrest Lions, and obviously tackling the Nittany Lions, so it said "Lion tackles Lion" on that picture.
That's great.
That's great. That is great. Here's another, and here you are as a coach. I'm not going to be able to get us all in there, but and number 9 is
Broderick Jenkins.
How about that?
Yeah, I think it was a freshman that year. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that was one of those cold spring days out there.
Yeah. Now, was this looks like West Virginia, but may not have been.
Yes, that is.
Okay.
That's up there in the grass field on the practice field. It's turf now, but that was up there in the grass field, up on top of the hill there.
Yeah. I told David before, and I had trouble formatting those. That wasn't very good. But let me see. So, at any rate, excellent. David, we certainly appreciate you being here. We've got a couple minutes left, but any final comments you want to make before we do the perfunctory end of show speech, so to speak?
No, Frank, I enjoyed being on here. Thanks for having me. It was a great time. Good to see you again, Mark, Mickey. It's great to meet you. And again, like I said, hopefully we can get somebody there that's got some ties, and if we don't, that's able to put a staff together to have some ties to West Virginia football, so we can so we can get the old gold and blue rolling again. Because again, it's a great place, and I don't care. It seems in this day and age, I don't care where you go, you see that flying WV.
That's right.
That's for sure.
There you go.
So
that's right.
Let's go Mountaineers.
Yep. And for those people, you've said it, David. We were talking before the show. When people go, you went to West Virginia, well, all you have to say is, if you went to Morgantown, you would know why I went to West Virginia. That's all you have to do. It happens every time. Final comments, Mark, at your end? Any thoughts about the search that you haven't shared? You want to say anything?
I'm anxious to get it over with. See where we're at. But like I said, I have faith in Baker, and I think he'll make a good decision. I think I'm impressed with him so far. I think he's done good with his earlier hires, and I think he'll do good with this one. Yeah,
let me see here. I'd love to see A day brought
Jamil
back
Adi.
his
Adi.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
was going to say that in my
Excellent
comments.
choice.
That's you got
Excellent choice.
it's a great choice. You got it's played there. I had opportunity to work with Jamal out in Arizona a little bit, and obviously he's done a great job. It's been to Georgia, it's been to Miami. Now he's coaching. One of the best teams in the NFL now, coaching up there. So again, you got Jaywan Siders, who's also played there at West Virginia. It's at it's up at Penn State. So, again, you got some. I think there's some quality candidates out there. Bottom line, I think it comes down to somebody that's got ties and or can put a staff together that has ties and knows something about West Virginia State or West Virginia and West Virginia football.
Good. I think the answer to this question is yes. Is it, David?
Yes, that is a yes.
Yep. Yeah. We missed the Wolfman.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Got to play with Ron as well. I was a freshman when Ron, 84th. I was a freshman with Ron and stuff. So Wolf's definitely missed his boys, and one of my sons played ball together. So Wolf was a great guy, but missing great personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we leave, we want to put a plug in for the WVU men. They're playing Georgetown in the Big 12 Big East Challenge on Friday. Thankfully, we're now on network TV again. It'll be ESPN2. Then they play North Central next Tuesday. That's on ESPN1. And let's also talk about the women. My God, they came close, beaten by a top 10 team in Texas. They're going to play. That's a strange time. Let's let that loop around. I had to look at this 3 times to see if it was correct. They're playing East Tennessee State University at 10:30 a.m. on Friday. ESPN Plus. That's crazy.
Education Day. All the schools are invited to come. So
is that a tournament?
They'll fill it up that day.
Where are they playing that game?
Morgantown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm sure they got to clear everything out because that game against Georgetown, also in Morgantown that night. So it's 10:30. You can watch that on ESPN Plus. And then here's another plug. On Sunday, they're playing at Temple. That'll be a good game. That's on ESPN2. And of course, we know the big bowl announcement. The Mountaineers are going to have a tough time with Memphis. Memphis is a good team. Yeah, on December 9th, December 17th on a Tuesday at 9 p.m. And what's interesting about
Frisco Bowl?
In Frisco, Texas.
Frisco, Texas. Okay.
Yeah, Frisco, north of Dallas.
Just north of Dallas.
North of Dallas.
North Dallas.
Yes.
Hey, Frank, I got a couple of things here before we close.
Sure. Yeah. Hold on.
Just to talk about the. First of all, I wanted to mention the last. Last 2 shows of the year.
Let me finish this, and then that's exactly what I was going to.
Okay.
What I was going to say on this one is that Mark and I were talking earlier. If you look at the data that I just thrown in here, they're 10-2, but they lost to Navy. Look at that score, 56-44. They lost to a 500 San Antonio team, 44-36. They beat Florida State, had a down year, but look at the average gain score. This is a copycat of Texas Tech.
Exactly. Yeah.
They score a lot, they give up a lot. So let me get this out of here, and then I was going to bring this up and kick it to you. Let's start, Mickey, with the next week's show, and I'll put this together. So why don't you talk us through that?
Oh, thanks for putting that graphic together. Appreciate that. Yeah, next week we're honored to have Kevin Berry, the vice president of the National Alumni Association, will be our guest on the show next week. Also, CEO of the Alumni Association. He's going to be talking about everything that's going on at the national level with the Alumni Association. Met with him in his office while I was up for the Baylor game. He readily agreed to be on the show with us and is looking forward to participating. And also, Frank, I've got a call into him. We're going to try to attempt to get the Dallas alumni chapter president on the show for a little while that night too. Talk about the upcoming bowl game and what they have planned, as we did last year with the Charlotte chapter president when we went to the Duke Mayonnaise Bowl. So we got that coming up on next week's show. And then the last show of the year on the 18th, we have decided to dedicate to the 55th anniversary of the 1969 Peach Bowl team, which will occur on December the 30th of this year. I can't believe it's been 5 years already since we had our 50-year reunion.
Amazing.
But that night, we're going to be honored to have, I played for an offensive line coach by the name of Jack Fligg. There's only 2 coaches left from the staff that I played under. The rest of them have passed. Jack has passed, unfortunately, but his son, Matt Fligg, has been a very successful high school football coach here in Georgia for 37 years. And he's now retired, living in Charlotte, North Carolina. I talked to Matt. He's going to come on the show that night. He's going to talk about his remembrances of that night, Masters in the Mud, down at Old Grant Field, when it rained cats and dogs that night. Matt was 10 years old when that game was played. He's now 66. I've also been in contact with a bunch of my old cohorts. We still text each other daily. And so far, I got 4 of my teammates that have agreed to dial into the show and say a few words about their remembrances. So it's going to be a big night on the 18th. We're going to dedicate the show to the 55th anniversary of the 69 Peach Bowl team, and we'll be closing out the year with that. I did have just one thing I wanted to close with from my end, Frank, in regards to the comments that David had earlier, which I'm so supportive of and in agreement with. Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. And wouldn't it be both ironical and, my favorite word, Frank, synergistic, if in the Lord's planning for this world and today's times, that Neil Brown was always meant to be a Mountaineer, but maybe not a West Virginia Mountaineer, maybe an Appalachian State Mountaineer.
There you go. That's right.
And
That's right.
I want to wish Neil all the luck in the world. I think the world of the gentleman. I think he did. And Ren gave him nothing but the highest of praises in his press conference. The things he did through COVID, through the institution of NIL and the transfer portal, everything he did to develop young men off the scenes that have nothing to do with winning football games. Although I guess in a way it does. But I just want to give my kudos to him for everything he did for West Virginia University. And it's just so pleased to see everybody on social media pretty much saying the same thing.
Yeah. It's a tough job, and brought in good kids. They stayed out of trouble, and they advanced. They graduated, and it goes back to what David was saying. You got to win, and at this level, it's a high level. I will say that I haven't said this in public. I'll say it now. I too was on that 69 team. Played left out.
That's right.
I played left out. Didn't play at all. Always left. They said Frank was always the best person who was left out. And I've got, I'll be on that show too. But it's great to do that. Thank you, Mickey.
And
terrific.
It's required you wear your commemorative honorary brother T-shirt that night, Frank. Okay.
But I have to admit, I left it in Michigan and I'm in Florida now.
Oh no.
So I don't have it here. I'm so sorry. I had a brain freeze. Oh, it's up in Michigan. Anyway, one last thing, and then we'll say goodnight, is that if everything goes well, next week will be our first show that will be simulcast. We'll continue on the Voice of College Football on Mark Rogers' Neighborhood, Joey Foster, but we'll also be starting or launching, we hope, our new collaboration with Darren McGuffin and the New River Network, and we'll be on their YouTube channel. We'll also be on Optimum Cable in South Central West Virginia, will be available internationally on Roku. We'll be on Facebook, and we'll also be on the web. And so we just we'll keep our fingers crossed. It may have to be delayed. We'll see, because we want, let me close this. We want Greg Crist back with us, and it would be great to launch that collaboration with Greg with us versus him not being there. So for Greg, for David, for Mark, for Mickey, thank you all for watching. This was a fun show. Exciting times in Morgantown, important decisions to be made. And as Mickey says, you say it, Mickey, it's a great night to be a Mountaineer, no matter where you may be. There you go. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.
Night.
Well, we got one more comment here. Got to have a comment. Oh, yeah. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Brian, thank you very much.
Hey, Frank, speaking of that, we forgot to mention we need Greg back here to keep us in line. I also wanted to mention that Ty Bullock and Bullock's Distillery has re-signed as our show supporter for the month of December. And we'll be talking about that more in the next 2 weeks' shows.
Very good. Excellent. We'll do that. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.